All right, moving on to the next subject. Let's talk about the unfortunate and tragic events that took place in Michigan recently, where a school shooting occurred and 4 students lost their lives. Um, I'm sure most, if not all of our listeners have heard about it. But unfortunately, a 15-year-old student decided to walk into an Oakland County, Michigan school and take the lives of 4 teens. Um, and it is absolutely tragic and saddening. And our thoughts go out to all the families and friends and loved ones of those who lost their lives. May they rest peacefully. So, the subject that we're going to be discussing is the Michigan school shooting another example of white domestic terrorism? Now, I'm going to start us off on this, but before I do, let me just make something clear to our listeners out there. Here on The Good, the Bad, and the Truth, we don't shy away from the difficult conversations. Does not mean that we have any type of hatred or etc. for anyone, but we're going to speak on exactly what the title of our show is: The Good, the Bad, and the Truth. I'm going to take the time to just let you all know that the opinions that we share are exactly that. They're the individual and sometimes collaborative opinions of the three of us here. And while we are always going to be truthful and honest, we definitely never intend to offend anyone. So please don't take it in that manner. But we are definitely going to have very honest and forthcoming conversations. So again, is the Michigan school shooting another example of white domestic terrorism? I'm going to say absolutely. The reality of it is when is a school shooting not an example of white domestic terrorism? I mean, America is obsessed with guns in an extremely ridiculous way. And it is a common mindset of a certain group of folks who are the primary proprietors of gun culture. And there's a reason for that. The reality is they know to a certain extent that they can get away with it. I mean, look at Kyle Rittenhouse. He literally illegally obtained a gun, put himself in danger, killed people exercising their civil right to protest. Side note, don't forget who they were protesting on behalf of, right? Black people, black men,
right,
who was shot in the back. Let's not forget that. So in some people's eyes, you know, they were the enemy as well. Just throwing that out there. That's a whole nother episode though. But kill people exercising their civil right to protest, and then claimed self-defense and got off on it. Now, nothing I said to my knowledge is inaccurate. Those are the actual facts of the case. Yes, legally it was deemed self-defense, but again, he drove himself to the location. So he literally knew of a dangerous situation and put himself in the middle of the dangerous situation, and then took lives as a result of putting himself in that situation, regardless of his so-called reason, claimed self-defense and got off for it, and is doing interviews afterwards. Someone truly regretful of having to take lives would not be all over TV and radio shows and etc. doing interviews about it. It is very George Zimmerman-esque what is happening here. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to this specific situation, I mean, we just can't ignore that this country has a long history of terrorism against non-white races with sometimes very little consequence to those who are found guilty of it. So what has happened is this non-justice has perpetuated these behaviors. I mean, here's one. Let's evaluate, right, what happened with he shall, I shall never name him. I will never speak his name, that shot up a Black church and killed 9 innocent people. He was literally taken to get something to eat before being taken to jail after he was apprehended for killing 9 people, for slaughtering 9 people.
Yeah,
that's the dude they took to Burger King, right?
Yes, to Burger King. That is so beyond absolutely fucking ridiculous and preposterous and outrageous that it's even like still difficult to comprehend, even though you know there are racist people in this nation. It's still difficult to comprehend that that actually happened. I mean, imagine a Black man did the same and he went into a church and killed 9 white people. He probably wouldn't have even made it back to the precinct alive, much less stop to get dinner.
They probably told him to go get church's chicken, but
I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. I can't even, like, that is such an outrageous and outlandish situation, and it's just it's absolutely preposterous. But what's sad is it's not even an extremely difficult situation to comprehend because we're so used to just the total ridiculousness of the injustice that happens against Black people in favor of white people in this country. We're so used to it that as preposterous as that situation is, something like that, those cops should have been actually investigated for dereliction of duty, amongst other things. The public should have called for their investigation, because I'm fully comfortable in saying it is not proper protocol to stop and get a suspect in a murder investigation dinner. There has to be a number of protocols that violates. But we're so used to it as a society that no one even pursued that angle of it. It's sad. It is absolutely sad. But at the end of the day, that's the country we live in. I mean, it's 2021. It's been 71 years since the start of the civil rights movement. 71 years. It started in 1950. And we're still not close, anywhere close to full equality. And honestly, I don't think we ever will be. I just don't. We're making progress, yes. But full equality, absolutely not. There's still systemic racism. There's still discrimination. There's still blatant injustice. We're not there. So if you take all that into consideration, in summation for me, yes, this is easy. The Michigan shooter, the Michigan school shooting, all of the school massacres are prime examples of white domestic terrorism. I mean, the shooter announced he was going to shoot his classmates on social media days before the occurrence. He received help from his parents. I'm sorry?
So on time out. So my man said he was going to do it. He got help from parents. Nobody did anything. So y'all just sat here.
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm going with it. He announced he was going to do it. He received help from his parents. Excuse me, let me clarify. He didn't receive help from his parents. His parents purchased the weapon for him. They gifted it to him. It was a gift to their son. He was caught exuding questionable behavior the day before and the day of the shooting. His teacher caught him drawing disturbing things, alerted the office. They called his parents. His parents came up to the school. The teachers not the teachers, but the administration and the parents sent him back to class the day of the shooting. Ridiculous. That is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And if anyone wants to deny it, then all they are doing is showing you their true colors. If they want to deny that this is an example of white domestic terrorism, whether they're white, black, Spanish, Asian, doesn't matter. They're showing you who they are. You accept what they're showing you. They are a bigot. They are more than likely racist. And you accept that and you get as far the fuck away from them as possible. Because there is no question that's exactly what this is. If in no other case, all of the evidence that is showing for this one. Sad days and times we're living in, folks. Sad times. 71 years. 71 years since the start of the civil rights movement. And I know what people are going to say. These victims weren't black. That's not the point. The point is that a black person could never get away with what is happening here.
But you just started to cut you off now, Angel. But you do know that they have to vote on the civil rights every 35 years, right? To reactivate the same bill that they wrote years ago.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And let me be clear. I'm not saying that I want a black shooter to go in and harm anyone or etc. and get the same treatment. Let me be clear on my point. That's not my point. The point is that if this were a black shooter, they would not receive the same treatment and they would not be able to get away with it. That's the point. And this particular, and they shouldn't. No one should get away with the crimes that these people have committed. But the point is that they are. When you look at it overall, how do they present black suspects versus white suspects? White suspects, when this story first broke, they were sharing a picture of this young boy doing volunteer work or something with glasses on and a cute little polo shirt. Nothing like the actual image he looks like today. Whereas when Trayvon was killed, they immediately released his record. They showed his mugshot or whatever picture it was for the little minor offenses or whatever it was he had. Yeah, white domestic terrorism is real and it's not being properly punished. And that's sad and unfortunate. And that's my thoughts on that. I'm going to throw it to Mr. PAT. What say you, sir?
So the Michigan school shooting is, in fact, another example of white domestic terrorism. Not only is this 15-year-old responsible, but so are the parents. See, when these kids go off, right. When these kids go off and shoot up schools, the parents should be punished as well, because they're the ones who raise these monsters. In this case, the parents of this school shooter gave the kid the gun for Christmas, which you've already touched on, Naya. But he was given a gun for Christmas. And as you've touched on already, it has been stated that they ignored early warning signs that he was planning to do a shooting. No one is born and ready to commit violent acts. When a kid commits a violent act, especially one that involves a shooting, the fact is they were raised in an environment that encouraged them to do so.
Woo, preach.
Yeah, that, I mean, we have to look at it. Like, the thing is, it's deeper. Obviously, it goes deeper. We look at the surface level of these things, but these things go deeper. Another white kid doing a school shooting, but we have to go deeper and look at the fact that these kids have parents that raise them more or less, however we want to look at how they're being raised. But these kids' parents are raising them to be these monsters. Like I said before, nobody is born and just ready to commit acts of violence. That type of behavior is cultivated. It's cultivated. So they're growing up in an environment that encourages that type of behavior. It encourages that mindset, that mentality. When somebody is that young, how do they even come to the conclusion of wanting to shoot other people and kill them? Like, it obviously it happens because we've heard this story multiple times before, but we got to connect the dots. Like, where does that come from? Where does that originate from? That's coming from the home.
Exactly.
That's coming from the home, straight up. Whether it's the parents, the grandparents, other family members, it doesn't matter. Whoever's raising them, whoever's the guardian, or the guardians, it's coming from there. That's the source.
Agreed. Can I just say one quick thing?
Yep.
I 100% agree with your statements right now. You're spot on so many different levels. It's just like racism. Racism is not something that people were born with. They're taught it.
It's taught, yeah.
Children inherently want to play with other children and etc. without seeing anything different as far as racism and etc. They grow up learning what racism is based on their environment.
Absolutely. It's taught. I mean, it is something that's just cultivated in them, and they are brought up in an environment that encourages it. So they come out of that environment into society and they're a racist all of a sudden. But again, that doesn't come out of nowhere. That's coming from somewhere. I just think it's interesting that this year, white men and white boys, in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse and the Michigan school shooter, whose name is Ethan Crumbley, is being highly publicized in the media. The part that's interesting to me is the back-to-back publicizing of it. Multiple things are being communicated at once. Basically, white vigilantism is one of them, along with the threat that white males can pose to anyone who crosses them. In some twisted way, it still communicates white male dominance to the public. It's also a way of saying that white males are not to be trifled with. Regardless of if we're talking about a heinous crime or so-called self-defense after provoking an altercation, the idea is that white males are dangerous. the headlines on a lot of the articles out there in the Matrix also communicate that these white male perpetrators were somehow innocent. And I'm putting innocent in air quotes, but it communicates that they were somehow innocent when committing the acts that they commit. There's basically a presumption of innocence. A good amount of the headlines for this Michigan school shooting case is calling Ethan Crumbley a suspect, or they're saying accused, or in the case of Fox News, and I'm gonna put these links in the description, but in the case of Fox News, they say alleged. Now, we all know that these headlines and the wording in these articles are disingenuous. However, it's not surprising because this goes back to my point that there is a presumption of innocence. There is a presumption of innocence when it comes to white perpetrators. So once again, multiple things are being communicated to the general public. This school shooting, along with the others throughout history, recent or otherwise, are examples of white domestic terrorism. And I'm gonna just rest on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, PAT. And just wanted to add one quick thing to your what you were saying before we throw it to Ime, because I definitely agree with your assessment.
I mean, if you take in consideration the parents from the Columbine situation, right? And I know a lot of people are going to say, wow, Naya, Columbine happened in 1999. You know, why are you bringing that up now? Because it is relevant to the fact that these parents are literally contributing to these travesties, right? Their decision to be complacent is leading to the loss of lives. And when you look at it, is the Columbine situation, it's as egregious, in my opinion, as what's happening with this Michigan school shooter. Because it's my understanding at one point, the two shooters literally told one set of parents not to go into their garage because they were working on an experiment. Not only did they tell them not to do it, they were adamant about them never going in the garage. And the parents complied. And you know what they were doing in there? They were making bombs and practicing for the day of the shooting. Now, all jokes aside, because I don't mean this in a joking way.
Hold on. You said practicing. So
they were literally like rehearsing how the day was going to go and etc. in the parents' garage.
Oh, tell me, did they think they were like a basketball team or a football team? Like,
yeah, they were like. Apparently, investigations have shown that they were trying to build bombs in that garage, that it was like their meeting area to plan out the massacre, which is what makes it worse is that the parents were so fucking complacent about it. Oh, my son doesn't want me to go into the garage. I'll just stay out of the garage that's under the roof that I'm paying for. Now, do y'all, and honestly, have you ever heard of such a thing happening in the Black household? Would that have flown?
Nope.
Could we tell our parents, hey, don't go into the garage, don't go in our room? I'm not laughing at the situation, but the ridiculousness of it is just preposterous. Anyway, I would have gotten that. I would have
gotten that Super Saiyan slap and whatnot.
Exactly. You know? Listen, Black parents would have immediately read that as a red flag, and the very first thing they would have did is went and checked the garage. Good parents in general would have done that, in my opinion. Black, Spanish, it doesn't matter. Good parents would have taken that as a red flag and checked things out. I'm sorry, but they were just entirely too chill with being told they can never enter their garage, adamantly at that notion. Good parents should have investigated. I just wanted to add that to the parents being held accountable and the comment that PAT made that, in these situations, parents should be held accountable. Absolutely agree with you. There's got to be some red flag, some sign, something, if you're a good parent, that your child is a possible school shooter. No child just wakes up a school shooter someday. Something has happened, and a good parent is able to detect some sense of, hey, things are off here. So just wanted to add that to that point that you made there, PAT. We're going to throw it to E-Man to wrap us up. What say you, sir?
So before I even start, this is what I want to say. Hey, first and foremost, you can't be practicing something like y'all think y'all running like a football team. Like you feel like you a coach out here, like y'all running plays and whatnot to, to go commit something this heinous and whatnot. That I'm not even gonna say that shit needs to stop, but that's way over the top.
Under their parents' noses, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but under their parents' nose. In this case, E-Man, the parents were called to the school the day of. The day of, sir.
This is why I feel like children, they need more hobbies. They really do. This is outraging and whatnot. So what I want to say is
parents actually need a parent, be good parents.
Man, I
preach, PAT.
The whole thing with the whole parenting thing, like everyone has their views on parenting. Everyone has like their own type of style that they want to. But yet, if this shit don't work, then it's okay and whatnot. Stop doing ain't shit that ain't working and feel like you doing a good job and whatnot. That shit just needs to stop for real and whatnot. If you're doing a shitty job, just say, I'm doing a shitty job. All right. If you need help, say that you need help, but make sure the help makes fucking sense though and whatnot. Stop doing all this outlandish shit because this is something that that what you in. And this is why a lot of kids don't fall into the beliefs of many of what their parents telling them. That's the shit that's driving everyone crazy insane. But going back to this whole shooting shit, this shit just it just bothers me so much because if you look at it, right, there's been so many school shootings that happened in the past several years, and yet they're making more schools. What's the easiest term to use? Making it feel more like prison every single day and whatnot. And this is coming from an educator, The more surveillance you have in a building with kids, it's not making it safe. You're more invading privacy now and whatnot, And that might sound confusing, but I'm gonna tell everyone like this, the more eyes you have on more people, it's not because they're not doing something wrong or they're not doing something right, You're still in their space, but you're using ineffective / somewhat effective ways to, to get more into their space, Like the only time that they don't feel like eyes are not watching them is when they're in the bathroom and whatnot, because you can't put a camera in the bathroom. That's illegal, by the way. But, I feel like they're going to try to bump more security in schools and it's still going to make shit worse and whatnot, Yeah. And I tell everyone like this, like a lot of kids are privileged enough that you don't have to go to school being worn down and whatnot to figure out if you have a gun in your bag or a knife or some type of sharp weapon. DC, kids gotta make sure they go through a metal detector and get worn down before they enter the building. They have to do it every time they enter and exit the building. You know, you guys got the privilege to do, you know, what you want. Hell, you got people that won't even check your bag if you have a gun and whatnot, you know? So it's really hard to, like, to really call it a really high domestic, terrorism type of thing. But they're doing shit they shouldn't be doing and whatnot, you know? You know? Children are retaliating because they're being bullied at school and whatnot, you know? But does it come to that extreme? Like this person has to lose their life behind it, you know? That's a whole nother extreme and whatnot. And that's where most of these kids are taking it now, you know? And
So
it,
just a
it
quick question, E-Man. Sorry, didn't mean to
there
interrupt
you
you.
go.
So just to make sure I understand where you're coming from, in your opinion, this is not particularly white domestic terrorism per se, but rather a reaction by school students who are being bullied and are being forced into an environment that feels like jail. So basically, you're saying this is a natural reaction of evolution?
I hate to say it, but yes, that's true, you know?
Okay.
Because
But can I ask you, how come no other race of student has committed a school massacre yet?
Mm.
I
I
mean,
can tell
black
you,
kids are bullied all the
I'll
time.
tell you, I'll
Same
tell you,
issue,
and
et
I'll tell you
cetera.
the reason why. Many people don't know that, constant school shootings happen in DC every single day. You
Right.
know? Many people don't know that. There's a school called Maya Angelou Public Charter School that
Mm-hmm.
when I was working in DC, when I was coaching over there, you know, there was many times we couldn't go to the school and whatnot. They actually, if in when you go over there and play at their arenas, they actually have a closed gym. Nobody can be in the gym while any sporting event is going on and occurring and
Right,
whatnot.
but is
Like it's that
that a
serious.
result? Right, but is that a result of environment in general? Because are these random children being killed, or are these targeted individuals? Which I'm not saying is right, but to me it sounds like, okay, that's a rough area and the kids are growing up disenfranchised there. And so there may be even some gang activity where, members of rival gang factions are shooting at each other and etc., which is not right. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's right, but that is very different than a school shooter walking into the school and killing random innocent children who weren't even a part of their quote unquote bullying experience.
Which
Right.
is
So, in other
which
words,
is
is there a difference in the motive? And is the difference in the motive significant?
I mean, is the motive like if the motives are, I wouldn't say they're different, but they're
I say they're
always
different.
there's a yin and yang towards many people's motives and whatnot. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them can be different, but some of them can be the same. Because most people say because you live in the suburb that we're different and whatnot. Technically, you're not different. That's all basically is just you know my environment's a little more hostile living in the hood. Yours is a little less hostile. Can we both go to jail? Yes. You know, can we go to jail for the same thing? Yes. Who do you think is going to go to jail first? I don't know. Maybe the person who lives in a more hostile environment versus the non-hostile environment. But those who live in a non-hostile environment tend to get away with a lot of things and whatnot. You know, and in this case, up in Michigan and whatnot, I don't even know, what type of environment they live in, but the simple fact is, if if he wasn't checked towards having a gun, that means you live in a very non-hostile environment that it was very easy to, bring a weapon into the building to kill people and whatnot, you know? And
Okay, so you're saying the environment also played a part in his ability to easily bring a weapon into the school. So
yes,
not so much the motive, but the environment also contributed to him being able to do that.
yes, and
Okay.
that's why I don't like to use the word domestic, because you know, when you live in an environment, where it is easy to go walk around and no one bothers you. And the simple fact is, like, everyone sees you as a human being, but yet not the color of what you look like, you know, until you leave that environment, you go to a different environment where people see things differently. That's what confuses a lot of people and be like, well, I seem like I'm not that safe anymore versus is where where I live at and whatnot, That's where
I,
many
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, but that's, I mean, not everyone, but majority of certain people, that's where people choose to live. When it comes towards like living somewhere, everyone chooses different places where, towards like where to raise a family, and have kids at, but
No, I
you
actually
know,
was going to say, I think you raised a deep point there. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was going to say
no,
that
you good.
I think that your point about the environment playing a part in him being able to have an easier time to pull this off is spot on. Because I think that there is definitely a much more difficult situation to navigate through for high crime areas to get weapons in the schools. I definitely totally concur with you there. But I think the term domestic terrorism is generally speaking to the United States itself, right? Like, did it happen within the United States? Because typically domestic terrorism refers to happening on your homeland, right? As opposed to international terrorism and et cetera, where,
Mhm.
stuff that's happening in Arabia and et cetera. So the only thing I think I might be not connecting on is that yes, the environment definitely plays a part in how easy it is to execute the situation. But I think the motive is a big part of this question, because the reality of it is, in my mind, the motive behind these massacres that have occurred at these schools is white frailty. It's children being bullied who feel like, as a white person, if they are being bullied and etc., they have the right to take the lives of other children who have nothing to do with it. Because I don't know of any other, the only other shooting I can think of, mass shooting I can think of, that was an act of domestic terrorism that wasn't perpetrated by a white kid was the Virginia Tech massacre. Because it's my understanding that that shooter was Asian.
Yeah,
But
that was a very interesting one, but yeah.
yeah, that was the only, and to my knowledge, and again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but to my knowledge, every other mass shooting at a public school that, again, to my knowledge, was executed by a white male student.
Which
Even Sandy Hook, where unfortunately elementary school children lost their lives, white male
mm,
shooter.
mhm. And that's the thing, that you know, I wouldn't say it bothers me, but it's concerning, you know, and not just because he's white, but these are the communities, that many Europeans and whites live in, and they live there because their community feels safe and whatnot, and they feel like this wouldn't happen, you know, and it happened. And the I would say the worst part about it is not that the shooter is white, but the casualties behind everyone not seeing it and whatnot. That's what bothers me, that if it, and just like, say when someone said, oh, if it was a black person, it'd be a whole different story. Well, yes, because every story on the news, when like this happened, majority of them are actually scared and whatnot. But because they look like them and whatnot, the level of fear is not as big, supposedly, But when it comes to like any type of situation like this, and even, towards the shooting, it's getting down to a point that it's becoming so, like it's becoming so, like it's becoming so something that's being so complicated. Like I'm gonna say, but more like it's occurring a lot and a lot, and not just occurring a lot. It's occurring a lot in many different school systems, but yet the only thing they survive, like their biggest solution is basically, putting up more cameras and whatnot. But
Yeah.
and young children's lost their lives and whatnot. Many people might not even understand it, that many young children lost their lives, and some of them, you don't know if they even had a bright future towards doing something else, or at least something, but their lives were cut short because of somebody's anger and frustration and taking it out on them for no reason and whatnot. And and that's the saddest thing about like this, like every school shooting that I hear. That's the saddest thing,
Right.
And just that, and my note is, like I feel like we need to do better all around, and like, not just in, not just in our community, but all communities and whatnot, because if you guys want something to stop, like we got to be that prime example. Because just like 3 weeks ago, I'm not too sure if anybody heard this, but a kid at a DC public charter school, DC Prep, he also got killed by a drive-by shooting not too far from his school. I think he was leaving school, and I think he was a senior and whatnot, And I'm lost of words, and everyone's still expressing, the same thing that I keep expressing and whatnot, So, and I'm gonna just leave this final note before I keep rambling on, but we just gotta do better. And I'm gonna just leave it as that. We gotta do better and whatnot, We just gotta do better, because we can't keep losing more and more kids to shooting if the proper people not doing the proper things and whatnot. Because this could have been preventable, because like these kids are practicing and rehearsing to do what they're supposed to be doing, but yet no one said anything. That proves to tell me that you guys were cool enough to let them do it and whatnot.
Yeah, I feel like
And
that I
that's just
feel
my
like
thought.
if any, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was just going to say, I feel like if
No,
I
you're good.
agree
You're good.
with any of your points, is that the one that, PAT brought up, which was that the parents are not innocent in these situations. I think there are definitely different motives for different situations, and that's not to make any of them right. But to the particular question of was domestic terrorism, white domestic terrorism, I think the motive behind this suggests that it was, which is a little different than when a child gets killed, unfortunately, in a drive-by shooting at a school, because that's again related to their environment, which is also the point you raised, and a good point. But I think it is a little different than the domestic terrorism thing. But thank you for sharing, E-Man. Definitely great points there, fellas.